Hi, everyone. My name's Paul. I manage Ambition's Transformation and Projects division. Right now, it's quite hard for job seekers in the transformation and project world. It's been the case probably for the last 12 to 18 months or so. I think the major problem is supply and demand. So, demand being roles being advertised, supply being people looking for work in the world of business analysis, project management, change management, transformation, those kind of worlds. Um, this is kind of out of whack. It's a big challenge at the minute. Indeed, recent figures released by Seek show applicants per job in this space are up by 68%, which shows quite starkly the challenges that people are facing in the market at the minute. So I wanted to talk to you today about some practical tips that I'd recommend to kind of try and adopt to help your way through job searching process if indeed you are looking for a role at the moment. I think the biggest thing, firstly, would be around mindset. It's understanding that ultimately job markets are cyclical. We can't control them. In my 8 years doing this job, I've seen several examples of how cyclical the job market can be. I suppose the most extreme example would have been in 2020, in the back half of 2020, inspired by a global pandemic. Times got pretty difficult across Australia in many different domains, many different markets. But ultimately, it turned around, it rebounded, it bounced back. And ultimately, I think in terms of people's mindset when they're looking for a job right now, it can be easy to lose sight of that cyclical bigger picture. But as I said, in my many years doing this job, it always does turn around. So my biggest advice is, can you try and stay positive and control your mindset around that? Ultimately, it's out of all of our control. And we know that it will pick up, if not tomorrow, at some point in the near future. I think you can control your approach in terms of what you're doing to try and find a new role. And the biggest couple of tips I'd have around this would be utilizing your network. So that's people you've worked with before, ex colleagues, maybe old managers that you've reported into. Try and stay in contact with those people, follow up with them, buy them coffee, basically keep in touch with your network. I find if we've got the situation where there's so many people applying for roles directly, your CV can be hard to get through that pile. Whereas if you know people and you've got sort of a contact, that might be a way of beating the queue. Probably another way would be to build a network or stay in contact with a network of trusted agency recruiters. Our job is to sort of connect directly with line managers and help them, I suppose, find the right talent for their team. If you talk to the right agencies and keep in contact with them, when they get work on, they will think of you and they will reach out to you if the role suits your skills. I think something else you can do if you are looking for a new role, you can consider upskilling yourself, especially maybe doing qualifications, things you haven't done before. That can help really sort of build your experience levels and kind of add a point of difference. There's some really well-known ones in the projects change transformation world. They include things like Prince2, ProSci, Babok. But on top of that, I would suggest there can be some areas that you might not have thought of. I see high demand from clients, especially in the more technical side of things to do with things like artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. These skills and experiences are relatively niche, but in high demand across Australia at the moment. So I highly recommend, if you can, upskilling yourself in that kind of way, whether it's talking to people in that space, going to sort of meetups, or doing courses or qualifications. The other things you can definitely control, both your CV and your LinkedIn profile. And really, these are everything when it comes to job searching because they are both the first point of contact for employers as well as recruiters who are looking at people's skills and experience. There's many things I would suggest on this. I'll talk about this in a bit more detail in my next blog post. But the biggest things I would recommend would be to think about white space to text on your CV. So try and use shorter, sharper sentences and focus more on white space as opposed to dense blocks of text. That will mean people will read the words that you want them to read more likely, as opposed to getting lost in sort of big amounts of text. I would focus on a tailored career highlight section at the start of your CV, which really sort of highlights the experience and skills that you bring for that role. That's the first thing that people read when they look at your CV. And overall, if you can keep to a brief relatively brief sort of overall duration. So I would suggest 3 pages, maybe 2 if you can. That would be really beneficial in this market. Final thing I'd like to talk about today is hybridity. So I've referred to this in my previous LinkedIn post. That is in a tighter jobs market where there is less overall opportunities available, employers can really dig in on candidates who can offer more than one thing. So, for example, where previously a few years ago, an employer might have looked to hire a project manager and a business analyst, I'm increasingly and regularly seeing demand for hybrid business analyst slash PM candidates. So people who can offer both skills and experience in both of those categories. So my advice is to really think about where you've worn multiple hats, through your career and how you are displaying that on your resume. Is someone looking at that who's never looked at it before able to pick up where you've done both, as well as where you might have done one of more or the other, if that makes sense? Final point on that one, if you use a simple structure like context action result or situation task action result, so CAR or STAR methods on your CV to very clearly separate out the roles which have been more on one hand or the other or both, that will help you in a brief kind of way explain, kind of what you've done, what your role was, what you've done, and ultimately what you've delivered. So more than anything, I highly recommend using CAR or STAR through your CV, through your LinkedIn profile, and it will also help you when it comes to hopefully securing an interview.